Hi, my name is Lily Hills. I'm the author of the award-winning Body Love Manual, How to Love the Body You Have as You Create the Body You Want, and the former host for Spark People Radio, the #1 health and weight loss site in the country with 15 million members. And I'm an eating psychology expert. And in terms of being an eating psychology expert, I teach people the mental side of dealing with the emotions that make you reach for food you're not hungry for. And that is the key to pleasurable and permanent weight loss. And I know this from a very lengthy personal experience. When I was a senior in high school, I went on my first diet in anticipation of a date with a freshman in college. And I can remember it very vividly. I recognized that I needed to have a new bathing suit to go to the beach with this handsome fellow, and I was all excited. And I went into the dressing room with this cute bathing suit. It was a one piece, and it was all vivid colors of the rainbow. And I put it on, and I remember having my very first negative body thought. I remember saying, "Oh my God, you've gained weight and you have cellulite." And I can remember in that one moment just that feeling of shame and embarrassment rushing over me. And I decided I better go on a diet before I get to this date. So I took the bathing suit and I went home and I went on an all vegetable diet for 3 days because I had heard that was the fastest way to lose weight. And from the very first day that I went on this diet, it triggered something in me that made me start obsessing over food that I had never thought about before. So my one diet started me on a journey to a very, very compulsive and dysfunctional relationship with food. I went on the date, I lost a few pounds. It was agonizing from the very first diets, felt horrendous in my body. But I went on the date and we had a great time, but I couldn't wait for the date to be over because all I was thinking about was food. And I went home and I had the very first binge of my life. I think I ate an entire pizza and a half gallon of ice cream when I came home from the date. And of course felt horrible afterwards and decided I had to go back on the diet. That's what started a 13-year journey of compulsivity around food. And that's part of the reason I'm so passionate about supporting you in recognizing what doesn't work when it comes to weight loss. Because those 13 years were the most challenging of my entire life. Every single day, I had an obsession around food. And I couldn't stop myself from eating, even though I wanted to more than winning the lottery. I wanted to lose weight and get to my natural weight where I was relaxed around food and comfortable in my body, more than winning the Nobel Peace Prize. And I know a lot of you feel the same. You want to get to your natural weight, and you know that diets don't work. So I'm going to give you the keys to losing weight without dieting and having pleasure be a big part of it, because eating is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be joyful. You're supposed to be nourishing your body and experiencing joy. That's natural eating. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. So let's start first with, I'm going to give you 3 keys today that are going to help you get to your natural and ideal weight. So where I want to start is with key number 1, which is diets don't work. As I just talked about for the last few minutes, that first diet that I experienced took me to a place with my body where food became my main obsession. It became something that, again, prior to my first diet, I started eating when I was hungry, and I stopped when I was satisfied. But diets don't work. Why that's confusing is that there are thousands and thousands of diets out there. And we all know from personal experience that they don't work. In 95 to 98% of all cases, diets don't work. So you'll hear about someone who goes on a particular diet, and I'm not going to name any names here, but they go on a diet and they go, "Oh, I lost 30 pounds or I lost 10 pounds. I'm feeling fantastic." So we think, let me try that one. Well, that one sounds good. I can probably do that one. So we go on the diet, having all these great intentions, but the limited nature of the diet and the obsession around food makes it much harder for us to actually stay connected to our bodies, makes it harder to follow through with any eating plan. So diets don't work. That's the great news. You are now officially liberated, because if there were any product out there that you heard about that only worked in 5%, 2 to 5% of all cases, would you buy that product? Probably not. So now that we know that diets don't work, you have a whole new world open to you that gets you back to natural eating, eating in synchronicity with your physical appetites rather than eating because you feel restricted around a diet, or you're bored, or you're stressed, or you're depressed. So diets don't work. So fantastic news, you can start celebrating tonight. So why don't diets work? Well, diets don't work from two perspectives. One is the physical perspective. So when you go on a diet, essentially what you're doing is you're limiting your caloric intake in most cases. You're reducing the number of calories you bring into your body. And our bodies, if you go back to the earliest understanding of human biology, in the earliest days of our ancestors, they'd go out during the summer times and they'd be hunting and they'd be fishing and foraging for berries and collecting food. Food supplies would be abundant. So they'd eat lavishly many times, oftentimes during the summers. But then the winter months would come. And in the winter months, food was much, much harder to come by. They'd be out searching, but again, there wasn't as much abundance. So what our bodies would do to adapt to the scarcity is that our metabolisms would get lowered so that we could survive on fewer calories. So this is part of the reason when you go on a diet, you're basically telling your body there's not enough food. It's going into a famine mode. And so it's reducing your metabolism in order to deal with the reduction in calories. So what happens when you go back to eating normally after a diet, after a fake winter time, a fake scarcity that you're creating within your own body? Well, the metabolism's reduced. You go back to eating normally after the diet is supposedly done, but your metabolism's been impaired, and it's been impaired pretty dramatically. One diet with limited caloric intake can reduce your metabolism for up to a year. And that's a very, very big deal because your body, again, doesn't know that you've created the famine for it. So it's trying to help you survive by keeping your metabolism low. But you go back to eating normally, your metabolism's reduced, you're going to gain the weight back pretty rapidly, as we all know from personal experience. And the studies show that you're going to gain an additional 10% of your former weight in addition to that. That's why all of us know, again, it's no surprise, we go off the diet, we go back to normal eating, we gain the weight back, and then some. So that's why diets don't work from a physical perspective. Your body, again, is interpreting the lack as a famine, reducing your metabolism. So that's how it works from a physical perspective. Now let's move on to how it works from a mental perspective. So we know that what happens when we go on a diet is we're basically telling ourselves, you can't have that food. That food is now off limits. And so what happens it triggers something in our brain that almost, I compare it to when our parents would tell us when we were little, no, you can't have that. It creates a state of upset in our psyche. It makes us feel confined and restricted. And that creates what Dr. Neil Bernard calls in his book, The Power of Your Palate, a backlash effect. So if you tell us we can't have something as adults, there's a part of our mind that goes, yes, I can have whatever I want. So we tend to rebel against too much structure. So it's kind of like telling kids, you know, that with all these presents underneath the Christmas tree, you can't have the presents. That's all they're going to think about is the presents. And we all have a childlike side inside of us that's saying, I want those presents, or I want that pizza. If you tell me I can't have it, there's a part of my brain that says, I can have it and I will have it. It's almost like that inner child within is rebelling against too much restriction. It's almost like if you grew up in a household where there was too much restriction from your parents, you tend to rebel against it internally and sometimes externally. It's the same thing with diets. If you tell yourself you can't have something, the obsession's going to grow. And I'm pretty sure if you look at your own history around dieting and deprivation, what ends up happening? Do you end up thinking about the foods that you didn't worry about before? Do you end up feeling like, oh, I'm going to go on that diet tomorrow, but I'm going to eat every food I love today because tomorrow I'm going to be depriving myself? And you get mad at yourself for not being able to stick to the diet, which makes you more likely to eat more food because you're trying to comfort yourself with those uncomfortable feelings that come along with judging ourselves harshly and being upset with ourselves. So you can see how a diet would lead to that vicious cycle. And this is the vicious cycle that I was on for, again, 13 years. Going on a diet, losing some weight, although over the years it got harder and harder to stick to any single diet, gaining the weight back, and then beating myself up. So this is the vicious cycle that you are now going to get to escape. Because now that you know that diets don't work, you can free yourself from the idea that they do. You can free yourself from the idea that you have to deprive yourself from foods that you love. The key, and what we're going to be learning today, is about eating in moderation. Yes, absolutely choosing predominantly healthy, whole foods, one that you can pull from the ground and pluck from a tree. But I still eat every food group. I still have ice cream. I still have cake. I still have pastas. I still have pizza. But I've learned to eat in balance. I've learned how to create an off switch in terms of compulsive eating that allows me to eat in moderation. And now I enjoy eating more than ever before. And the same is possible for you. So in this next video, we're going to teach you how to eat in alliance with your physical appetites versus your emotional appetites for permanent and pleasurable weight loss.